Abigail North stepped into St. Mark's Chapel carrying church notices, the Hudson flat as pewter behind her. The air should have smelled of beeswax and old hymnals, but underneath lay a faint mineral sourness, like well water gone wrong. She stood still to separate the smell. Near the south pews, the odor grew stronger, not enough to name in a parish meeting, but enough to note. Sun at its height, boards warm. She pressed 2 fingers to a kneeler. A hairline crack in the floor seam caught grit like a quill catches ink. Thomas Hale, a senior boy whose printing proofs always read clean, appeared at the back. His eye followed her gaze. He knelt and traced the seam with a nail-bitten finger. The line widened half a thumb at one place. A black beetle ran along the crack, mandibles clicking as it tried to lift something pale. "You sing here at Vespers?" Abigail asked. "We do," Thomas said. "Smells more then, like wet stone under beeswax." The odor didn't behave like illness. It behaved like storage. Abigail took a small notebook from her reticule and wrote, "St. Mark's, South Pew Seam. Sun at zenith. Odor mineral sour beneath beeswax, stronger in heat." She paced from south aisle to north, 12 strides, then to the chancel rail. Only at Thomas's mark did the floor yield the smallest fraction, as if the builder had left a service seam. Matron Briggs entered with a key on a string and a basket of throat lozenges. The key disappeared into her bodice as naturally as a coin into a purse. Dr. Mercer's long shape filled the door next, his physician's eyes counting pews, lamps, faces. Thomas found Abigail at the porch, disheveled from running. "If you please," he said formally, "I have something to show you if you won't tell I had my knife in the wood." He unfolded a pencil plan of the south pew. Measurements by shoe length, the loosened place marked with a cross, and a notation. Gap widens at heat, seam breathes when choir stands. At dusk, Abigail entered the Academy Infirmary carrying a donation sheet. The air smelled of carbolic masked by orange peel. Beds ran in 2 rows, 18 cots each. Matron Briggs looked up from her ledger, the key glinting at her collarbone before slipping back into her bodice. "Miss North," she said, "you will disturb the feeble?" Abigail kept her voice low and made her catalog. 22 beds occupied, 8 spittoons between them, bottles on the high shelf, paregoric, laudanum, lozenges in a chipped blue jar, and beneath, a locked chest worn satin by years of handling. Dr. Mercer arrived with his black bag. "Catarrh," he said, counting a pulse. "Stale air and school, no alarm." He eased syrup between chapped lips with the same careful alignment he gave everything. Abigail tallied breaths, slow to fast. Printers count by trade. 2 boys held their chests silently. 2 had the dry bark that makes a listener's throat ache. Mercer kept 2 abed and released the others after prayers. He didn't look toward the chapel's south windows, yet Abigail thought of them. Briggs closed her ledger with a soft thud and wrote a new line, leaving room at the page edge, the way a clerk leaves space when he suspects a column will grow. Thomas had told her Briggs labeled such absences "removed" in a private book. Mercer stood near. "You're counting," he said. "Editors count. It makes the world seem obedient. Catarrh is not obedient. Neither are ledgers that grow quiet where names once ran," Abigail said. A laundry girl slipped in with folded flannels, small and damp-haired, wrists reddened from lye. At Abigail's shoulder as she left, the girl's voice didn't rise above linen against linen. "It smells worst in the chapel at Vespers, when the stone is warm." Rain came at dawn. By noon the nave smelled as it had on the hottest day, only stronger. Abigail stepped in to take the air's measure and set her palm to the same seam. The board's give was greater now, more spring, a compliance that didn't belong to seasoned joists. Thomas appeared with a dinner knife. He knelt and slid the blade into the seam, then lifted carefully. The board rose a finger. Air from below was cooler and carried a wool sour that had no business in a church floor. Under the board, a darker shape showed. Coarse weave, fibers matted from long weight. Burlap. The chapel door opened. Matron Briggs's shoes spoke on wet stone. "You do not lift boards in a house of worship," she said, each word immovable. Her keys chimed once against her ledger's spine. "Up, Mr. Hale." Abigail closed her notebook. "We will not trouble your floor. I came to ask whether oranges had arrived for the infirmary." Back at the press, she found an envelope on the stone. No stamp, slit with a fingernail. Inside, a single line in neat hand. "Count, if you dare." 2 words had been traced twice. Count and dare. She examined the envelope. Something had been folded in the sheet. She teased it out. No larger than a thumbnail, milk white and smooth on one side, ridged on the other where small sockets made neat scallops. Bone. On its face, in ink fine as fly legs. No, 18. Abigail slid the bone sliver into the envelope and pinned it with a straight pin from the galley proofs. She wrote on a scrap, "Unsigned note received, bone fragment enclosed, number 18 inked, coal smell on paper." Toward evensong the rain slackened. She walked back to St. Mark's, holding the envelope like a ledger you don't trust to anyone else. At dusk, Thomas waited at the south pew with a dinner knife and string, his face holding the studied calms boys learn when fear would waste their one chance. "Measure first," Abigail said. She took a tailor's tape from her pocket and noted distances. Then she nodded. Thomas slid the blade into the seam and lifted. Air from below reached up like a cool hand. Abigail eased the board aside and took out a dark-room lantern. She struck the light. The cone fell into the cavity. Tamped earth, close as a cellar. Sill rails burnished where something had dragged. And on that earth, head to toe, the shapes that turned routine into an account. "Speak numbers, not fancies," she said. She tied string to a tack and drew it straight, setting pins at 1-foot intervals. Thomas held the lantern while she touched each bundle with the back of her glove and tallied under her breath. Burlap, coarse weave, matted. Twine at the ankles and neck, some bundles smaller by a third. Between 2, she saw a square of cloth stitched to the wrapping. A tag, plain muslin, inked in neat hand. Number 18, mother unknown. They counted. She marked in columns, 1 to 10, left-hand row, 11 to 20, right hand. At 39, Thomas swallowed. The flame showed a seam stitched with thread finer than the rest, the knot tied in a way she knew from women's hands. 40, 41. She wrote each number. At 49, the lantern guttered. She put a steadying hand on Thomas's wrist. "Hold the bell," she said. The flame recovered. 50. The word lodged in her throat. 51. She drew a brace across all 3 columns and set the hour beneath. "Miss North," Thomas whispered. "Are they?" "We will not name what we cannot yet prove. We will name numbers and their places." They replaced the board with care. Abigail smoothed the beeswax until it took back the light. Shoes spoke on stone. Headmaster Yates entered with his hat in hand. He saw the lantern, the boy, Abigail's card with its columns. "You," he said quietly. "Thieves of sanctity, those are temporary deposits. You have mistaken charity for scandal. The Academy's hall smelled of lemon oil and damp wool. Trustees sat at a walnut table. Headmaster Yates kept his hat by his elbow. Matron Briggs folded her hands atop her ledger. Dr. Mercer stood behind a chair, watching. Abigail placed 3 items: Thomas's plan of the south aisle, her tally card with 51 counted, and a proof she'd locked in the press, a summons addressed to the sheriff. She kept the envelope with the bone sliver under her palm. Yates opened with measured courtesy. There has been heat. There has been catarrh. There has been zeal. Zeal is not a ledger. Abigail kept to measures. 12 strides the south aisle. Beneath the seam, tamped earth and bundles in burlap, head to toe. We counted 51. This tag read number. 18, mother unknown. My tally's times align with the Academy's feast notices and with gaps in the town death column. Matron's infirmary ledger shows absences marked removed. Briggs's mouth made a straight line. Removed to home. Returned to kin. We do not trouble names. Names object to being spared, Abigail said. We will trouble numbers, then. Mercer stepped forward. Consumption is not improved by spectacle. Charitable interments occurred behind the chapel when the path to the yard was impassable. If harm was done, it is negligence of air and season, not of intent. Yates took it up smoothly. Temporary deposits. Miss North mistakes charity for scandal. Abigail opened the envelope and tipped the pale bit onto her card. This was folded into an unsigned note delivered to my press. Number 18 inked on it. I set type for a summons, but did not run it without this meeting. I prefer to carry a donation. Failing that, I carry a count. She lifted the proof sheet and read aloud the part that named distances and times. If the floor is lifted with the sheriff present, the words can be fewer. Yates's smile thinned. We will not indulge a raid at whim. Trustees will appoint a committee. A boy from the sheriff's office entered with official economy and set a letter by Yates's elbow. The seal bled where rain had struck. Yates broke it and read. His eyes moved to Mercer, then to Briggs's ledger, then to Abigail's card. The sheriff, he said, orders the chapel floor lifted at first light. At first light, dew burned to a thin shine on the chapel slate. A carpenter set his bar under the service seam. 2 deputies lifted the board. Air rose from the cavity, cool, exact, and with it the mineral sour that had made rumor into evidence. The sheriff marked every board that came up and set a deputy to tally. Burlap lay head to toe on tamped soil, just where her card said it would. Count, the sheriff said. 1 to 10 came and went in the deputy's careful voice. Near number 18, the muslin tag showed as before. Mother unknown. The sheriff read the words aloud once and said nothing. At 26, a woman in a shawl stepped back. At 32, a father took his hat off. At 41, the choir master stared at the bell rope as if it might reset the room. Behind the chapel, men with spades opened ground where spring thaws ran soft toward the fence. The work showed the same hand as the floor. Quick disposal, shallow trenches, night-packed, stones set, as if from a hurried pocket. In the nave, Matron Briggs stood with her ledger shut upon the key, face paler than usual. Dr. Mercer kept to the side with his hat in hand. Headmaster Yates said repairs when men asked for a word. Abigail used her composing rule to lift 1 muslin tag, number 18, into a glassine envelope, marked it with the hour, and placed it in her reticule. By noon, the tally stood at 51. The sheriff repeated the number to the clerk and had him underline it. In the afternoon, he wrote his brief. Remains recovered from subfloor void. Burlap wrapping, tags numbered in part, intent unknown, negligence and repairs noted. Intent unknown is how towns live with themselves when proof offers a narrow door. The week that followed behaved like a pamphlet printed on good paper. Trustees announced improvements. Within a month, a new title went up that sounded like a cousin, not a change. The chapel porch gained a small brass plate. Repairs completed, 1828. No word said graves. The bell rope received a new splice. Abigail boxed what could be kept honest, Thomas's plan, the glass sign with number 18, her tally card, the envelope with the bone sliver pinned inside. She labeled the lid, Chapel South Aisle, counts and tags. Thomas came to the back stairs. Will there be names? When the parish signs the book, and when parents ask. Some will not. She adjusted the box so it sat square. On a Sunday, she walked the 4 blocks to St. Mark's. The aisle boards lay flush. Beeswax held the light. The seam breathed no more than sound timber should. Behind the chapel fence, new stakes marked rows where the sheriff had ordered proper burials. By afternoon, heat returned. Abigail sat with the ledger and entered the town's names as they came, leaving clean lines where none arrived. Toward evening, she walked past the chapel again, and, though the nave smelled only of beeswax, warm, damp rose from the south aisle in the smallest way, as if, under polished order, pages were still missing beneath the floor.